So I believe, Josh, you are introducing our speaker today. Is that a true story, sir?
That is correct. All right, thank you, Aaron.
Yeah.
Morning, everyone. Delighted to introduce my newest colleague at Pines Bach and law partner, Amanda Gennerman. Goes by Mandy behind the scenes, but formally Amanda. I've got a dog who wants to say hi in the background. So what a time to join any new business or law firm. Mandy and I have officially been working together since January 1st, but have actually never been in the office together. I've known Mandy. We're part of the same cohort, both graduated from law school in 2003. Both went to different law schools out of state, but came back to practice. Mandy is a native of Waukesha and went to UW Madison for undergrad, and then out to Colorado for law school. She is an immigration attorney. So like many other professions, each attorney has a specialty, and Mandy's is immigration. And so even though we're lawyers, John and Mandy and I are all lawyers, we have maybe a general understanding of what the other does in the practice area, but I, like probably most of you, do not understand the half of immigration law. More than half. I maybe have a 5% understanding. Mandy focuses on family-based petitions, humanitarian petitions, so petitions to become either a citizen or I'll let her explain it. Asylum applications, naturalization applications, and removal defense. She is a co-founder, board member, and volunteer of the Community Immigration Law Center in Madison. She has 2 sons. I saw in her bio she was inducted to the Waukesha North High School Wall of Stars recipient from 2015. So lots of good things that I could say about Mandy, but I'm going to let her move forward. So welcome, Mandy, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Josh. And thank you for having me. It is early, it is a Tuesday, and it was a long weekend. So thank you all for showing up. And I'm grateful to be here. I know I don't have a lot of time, and so I really asked Josh, immigration is an expansive area of practice. And I love every part of what I do. And one of the things that are most exciting is when I get to work with a client or a family that has come from potentially having no status here in the United States or has just entered the United States, and they make that transition from visa to permanent resident to US citizen. And so what I thought I would sort of talk about briefly is what is the process of naturalization. So naturalization is really the end game. That is when somebody has held permanent resident status for a certain duration of time and is now eligible to become a US citizen. And so what does that look like? I think there's sort of that misunderstanding of how somebody becomes a citizen, or why wouldn't somebody be a citizen? And if I married a US citizen, why am I not automatically a US citizen? Like, those are just general presumptions that I think people have about the system, and that's just not how it works. And so when somebody comes to the United States and they come, let's say, as a student, they come here to study at our fine universities, and they fall madly in love and they marry a US citizen, that US citizen has the opportunity to petition for that foreign national student to obtain residency, to be able to remain in the United States, to work, to travel, and be here lawfully. If that individual remains married to that original partner, after 3 years of being a permanent resident, they have that opportunity to apply for citizenship. again, some individuals never choose to make that transition to US citizenship for whatever reason. But more times than not, I think people see the value in becoming US citizens. And the things that I sort of go through with my clients is, let's make sure that when we apply for citizenship, that we're not opening any doors, or that there isn't something in your past that we've done that could harm you. Because there are often times in which applications are filed and behaviors are had that when you get to that end step and you're interviewing with an immigration officer, that something comes up. And that's not where you want to be surprised. I don't ever want to be surprised when I'm sitting in an immigration office with an officer. I want to know what my client's history is. I want to know how they got here, what have they done, and make sure that they're truly eligible for this benefit. The thing I like to talk to my clients about before becoming a citizen or when they become eligible is to say, you know, what are the benefits? Why would you choose to make this transition? Why, what are, you know, the reasons for going through this step? And the first one I say is they can't deport you anymore. And I know that that sounds possibly like flip, but the reality is sometimes wrong place, wrong time. Certain situations come up that as a permanent resident, you may be here 20, 30 years, and something comes into your life that could jeopardize that status and everything that you've done and everything that you've been here in the US. So for me, the number one reason to become a US citizen would be that you can no longer be removed by an enforcement process with immigration. The second I think the second most important reason to becoming a US citizen is your power to vote. As I like to tell all my clients, you've been in years and years of process of laws that have impacted you, and you've had no say in it. So now is your time. Now you get that opportunity to go to the ballot box and put the check in the box for those individuals who support the positions that impact your community. And so I think those are two really, really important pieces that when I'm working with clients to this step, stressing. And then I also talk to my clients as well. I'm like, it's very important while I focus on the getting to the United States and being here and staying here, that there are conditions in their home countries that they want to make sure that they're not losing and jeopardizing. The United States doesn't truly have a dual citizenship policy. We don't, in a sense, honor dual citizenship, where some countries you can obtain dual citizenship. But that being said, what I explain to my clients is that many individuals hold multiple passports from countries. So where you may need a visa from the United States to get into that individual's home country, if they have that second passport, they can travel in and out of the country freely to their home country and back to the United States. But for many, many people, the idea of an American passport gets them so much more freedom in other areas of the world. So that's kind of my pitch to people when I'm talking to them about citizenship. What I thought might be helpful is to show you what the government shows individuals. And they say, okay, so the body that adjudicates naturalization applications is under the Department of Homeland Security. So you have the Department of Homeland Security, and then there are shoot-off agencies. And the shoot-off agency would be the USCIS, which is United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. Some people still refer to Legacy INS. This is kind of that arm. So what was Immigration and Naturalization Service under the Bush administration created the whole Department of Homeland Security and shifted all of these agencies. So now we have USCIS. So USCIS, I'm going to try to share my screen. See if this works. Gotten pretty good at this, I think. Okay, this is what I want to show you. Okay, so this document, can everybody see it? Are we good? Is that sharing?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have two screens? Because I think it's on the second screen. Because I'll be to your folder.
Okay, so, oh, is that what I do? Or are we still not seeing it?
We're
folder.
seeing your list of files.
Okay, 1 second, please.
You might want to unshare and then reshare.
Are we getting anything there?
Not
Are you
yet.
still seeing
Not
my
yet.
screen? Okay, I'm gonna try one more time, and if not, how's that? Oh, I would help if I hit the share button. Okay, Are you seeing something?
There
with
we
the
go.
blue
There you
Okay.
go.
star?
Yep.
Okay, awesome, great. So again, this is a pamphlet that USCIS has created, and it's sort of a brochure. So understanding the steps to becoming a US citizen. Okay. So step one is, again, determining if you are a US citizen. This is, I know this seems odd, like how would you not know if you're a US citizen? But there are ways in which these charts and these factors come into play that maybe you don't know completely your heritage. And it is possible that you could be a US citizen without knowing it. Again, it's not common, but often we stumble upon it. So that would be something that we would evaluate with the client, particularly, like I said, what I really enjoy about my practice is that I've been practicing for 17 years. And I am at that point where I have been able to assist somebody in coming to the United States as a fiance. They have moved into residency, and from residency have completed that process to becoming a US citizen. And now they come back and they say, hey, I'm interested in bringing my mother. She's a little bit older, but she could really help us out with childcare. Is it possible we could petition for her? So again, the system starts again. And so it's pretty amazing of the number of clients that I've worked with in the 17 years that after 5, 10, even 15 years, they give you a call and say, are you still doing this? And I said, yes, I am still doing this with a new team, which is very exciting. But yep, I'm still doing what I do. And so you find those old files and you pull them up and you just feel good because you know what went on in their history. And like I said, nobody wants to be surprised when it comes to immigration. So then there's this process of 3 or 5 years. So again, if you married a US citizen and you remain in a marital union, you can apply for citizenship after 3 years, where most individuals have to maintain residency for 5 years before they are eligible to become a US citizen. So what I like about this passport or this information is it's just sort of a straightforward approach. I think that there's also sort of this misunderstanding that immigration is just a bunch of forms. And I would highly say that this is not just a bunch of forms that get filled out, because if you take the approach that it's just a bunch of forms, you are going to be in that situation where there's going to be a surprise. And again, nobody likes to be surprised before an immigration officer, particularly the attorney. So if you get to that point, it is really important that if you've had prior attorneys, I really encourage my clients to gather all the applications that have been filed in the past, because the number one thing that I think is important in an N-400 process is consistency. Has everything you've ever told the government remained consistent? If there is anything that is inconsistent, we need to address it, because again, this is not the time that you want something to come up. So again, this is sort of just what happens through the process. I know I'm really scrolling through this fast, but I also know I don't get a bunch of time. What happens when then you get to the interview, and what that all entails is not only are you required to fill out an application that's 20 pages long and talk about your history of where you're living, how many trips you've taken outside of the country, how long have you been gone. So that's part of the process. As far as being a permanent resident goes, the government says if you're going to be a permanent resident, then you should be here at least 50% of the time during your year. Unfortunately, situations take individuals outside of the country for longer durations. So if they have particular permission to be gone longer, they can maintain their residency and not have an issue of return. One of the things we've experienced over the last year with COVID are families that have been separated and have been unable to return, and they've been gone more than 180 days or possibly more than 365 days. And we're seeing at re-entry complications with Customs and Border. So that's at the port of entry when you come to the airport or to the border crossing and you present your green card and your passport, and the officer says, well, you've been gone for more time than you're supposed to. They could place you in secondary inspection, ask you more questions. They can then ultimately either allow you to re-enter the country as a permanent resident, or they could say, you know what, we think you've abandoned your residency and you have to go and see an immigration judge. So again, that's not really what we're doing here today. But that being said, naturalization does require that commitment to permanent residency. So in addition, when you go in for a naturalization application, you review the information in it. There's about 4 pages of yes or no questions. Have you ever? And these are grounds of what we call inadmissibility or deportability. So the law separates those two concepts. Inadmissible is something in which, can you come into the country? Are you eligible to enter or be a resident? Or deportation is the process is, are you here? Have you been here lawfully for some duration? And now is there a reason for the government to be able to remove you? So those are 2 different standards. But all of these questions come up in this N400 interview. In addition to being able to complete the application, there is a civics component, meaning a test of 100 questions that the government randomly picks 10 of them, and the applicant has to complete 6 of them accurately. This is usually a government and US history based exam. I believe during the Walker administration, the senior graduating classes have to take the full 100 question test. They said, I think his position was, if we're going to say that people becoming US citizens should know this information, we feel as well our high school graduates should know this information. So again, it's a test of 100 questions that the petitioner or the applicant has to study, but when they get to the exam, only 10 of those questions are asked. If they're successful at getting 6 of those right, 60%, right, you pass that qualification. In addition, there's a reading and writing component as well. It is where the officer will put up a tablet, like an iPad, and there will be a sentence in English. The applicant has to read that sentence out loud. If they read it, check, done. They move on. Because the application itself is also conducted in English. And so the officer is at that point exploring the applicant's ability to converse in English. What I remind my clients is you don't have to be an English professor. You don't have to be a native speaker of English to pass these exams. I have sat through many exams and watched myself sweat along with my clients to get their English. And again, it's really a rewarding part of my practice because people work so hard to get to this step. So if they're successful on the civics test, the English test, then the officer will read a sentence and they will have to write that sentence in English with minimal errors. A sentence that often comes up is, the Statue of Liberty was a gift from France. So, right, you have capitalization and punctuation and formal nouns. And so that's what my clients are studying. What's beautiful is that many counties and many literacy networks provide classes for individuals who are studying to become US citizens. And they may be like, maybe your spoken part needs greater work, or maybe your reading and writing needs greater attention. So there's so many ways to support individuals to get through this process. What I remind my clients as well is that if you are unsuccessful at the first try, you get to come back. So this application currently is $725. So I say to my clients as well, if you don't think we're going to be successful, I don't want you to spend your money on me or this application to end up in a situation that we're not going to be successful at. So at the end of the interview, the officer prints off a checklist and it'll say, yes, you've passed these requirements and we either recommend you for oath, which means congratulations. We think that you have done everything you need to do. And now you just wait for an oath ceremony where a team of judges will swear you in to be a US citizen, or the box will be checked. A decision can't be made at this time. And I warn my clients, I said, just because a decision can't be made at this time doesn't mean that we haven't been successful. There may be something in the file. I've had individuals who've done a lot of traveling and they're like right at that cusp. They've had just enough time in the United States. And so generally an officer will say, I just have to review the travel records to make sure that everything is fine. So that's not an uncommon situation. Potentially, if somebody has had contact with law enforcement within the last 5 years, an officer can review that a little bit closer. And what I like to say to my clients is that I'm not going to put you in a situation that I don't think we're going to be successful at. right? If there's something that is not right here, I don't think it's worth going through this. And you may forever be a permanent resident because there's something that could jeopardize your situation when naturalizing. And then the final step is the oath ceremony. And pre-COVID, the oath ceremony for the district that I practice in, which is here in Wisconsin, the individuals get the opportunity to go down to the courthouse in the Eastern District of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, and 1 to 3 judges are there, federal judges, and they conduct the oath ceremony and people are sworn in. And it's a celebration. There are donuts, there are coffee. It's really a rewarding opportunity. People get little American flags, they get a little constitution, and they give their green card in, and what they get is a certificate of naturalization. And upon that day, they can claim to be a US citizen, they can apply for a US passport, and moving forward, the rights and responsibilities of a US citizen attached to them. So that's it. I don't know how much time. I think I covered what I was supposed to do. Josh, you tell me if you want more, less, I can be quiet.
No, you have more time if you'd like it.
Okay. Are there questions? I really sped through that. Yeah, Annie or Ann's. Oh, I just can't hear you.
How about, we have a big issue with refugees coming in. We're probably going to have people coming in from Afghanistan and certainly Central America and Africa now. They just get a green card. Is that their deal, or how are refugees handled?
Sure. So asylees and refugees, while under the same standard of law, they are treated a little bit different. So a refugee is somebody who is outside of the country seeking to be allowed in based on persecution from their home country, where an asylee is somebody who has arrived at our borders or is already present in the United States and either is affirmatively applying to say, hey, I can't go back because of fear or past persecution, or they're placed into proceedings. So once you've been established a refugee, you've been vetted, you are allowed to enter the country as a refugee, you come in as on a travel document. Refugees, after 1 year of physical presence in refugee status, can apply for permanent residence. So they go from 1 year of refugee to green card. Okay, and so kind of the street term for permanent residency is green card. So refugees after 1 year can apply for a green card. From there, once they get their residency, their green card, they do have to wait the 5-year period before they can apply for citizenship if they so wish. And that's, yeah.
Well, just if they have to confirm that they are refugee status, does that mean our government contacts people in that other government?
That's correct.
And that their story is correct?
That's correct. So outside agencies that are housed in either their home country or a safer country that they've now fled to go through that process. So there's applications, there are background checks, there's vetting. Absolutely. So refugees don't get their permission to enter the country without going through that process.
Do some of these countries really cooperate, or does that remain a problem?
Well, so these agencies are generally not specific to the country. It's kind of it's sort of a third party agency. What is the human?
NGO.
And there's different NGOs, exactly,
Yeah.
that get involved that are doing this process. But what happens is those applications do come through the United States. They go through the Department of State, and then if they're asylees, it's through the Department of Homeland Security. So Interpol, I often say to my clients, I don't even know how some people get visas because, and I say that in a positive way, because there is so much background check going on at ports of entry with technology that we have today and being able to do biometrics and finger scans and just the way that we communicate. So I do feel as though obviously the president per Congress sets the amount of refugees that are allowed into the country per year. And the last 4 years, we saw a significant drop in what was being allowed to enter. COVID also, creates an issue for these individuals who are trying to obtain security and safety here. But we did see that the Biden administration upped their number of refugees that they were going to welcome to the United States.
And then where are they housed in before they get the refugee status?
I'm sorry, I don't know if you can see the climbing cat in my back, so I apologize. The beauty of home offices. I'm sorry, could you ask that question again? I want to make sure I answer.
And then are they housed somewhere in that time, or can they actually be here and have to show up for hearings? People that are seeking asylum or refugee status.
Okay, so again, a refugee, once they get to the United States, it's done. There's no more process except for the 1 year of physical presence followed by the application for green card. So they're resolved at that point. And there are many agencies and even called refugee resettlement agencies. So I think of Jewish Social Services here in Madison. They are an agency that once refugees arrive, they get connected to, and they assist with housing, employment, and things of that nature. So that's that. As far as asylees go, again, it sort of depends on where that process starts. So if we think about, if we think about cats crawling, if we think about what's going on at the southern border, okay? So individuals are now being allowed to enter the country. They often have connections here already in the United States. We know that, or that they know a cousin of somebody that they can connect to. And so housing, is not provided. Nobody comes in as an asylee and just gets an apartment. They're responsible for themselves.
Okay.
When we talk about unaccompanied minors, again, that is a vetting process where families are checked out, because I would hope that we are not placing, children with individuals that would be harmful. And again, often there is a relative or a distant family connection somewhere here that families are trying to be reunited with, even if children are coming without their parents. Often a parent may already be here, or again, there could be other family members that get them connected. But nothing is given to them for free. In that sense, we don't provide housing, we don't provide job training. But as an asylee, while their application is pending, they can, after 180 days, they qualify for work authorization. So they put in an application to the USCIS offices, and then they get a work permit. So, right, we want to encourage people to support themselves. And if we don't allow them authorization to work, makes it a little challenging to support themselves. So the asylum program does allow for work authorization after 180 days that their application has been pending with an immigration service center.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking. That looks like Ronald. Oh, we're on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay. What's the financial implication of between when they come with the visa versus after they're successful at becoming a citizen? Because I was under the impression that sometimes they don't want to become a citizen because they'll have to pay more taxes than if they're working here with the visa.
So individuals, there's not a difference in tax consequence for that purpose. I would say that 90% of the individuals that I work with that are even undocumented, they obtain tax identification numbers and they pay their taxes. They don't have a social security number, so their employment might not be authorized, or their employer is not asking for their proper documentation, or they're producing documents that don't match to who they are. But that being said, when they're earning their income, they're filing their taxes. And in fact, they're not then getting the benefit, right? So they're not receiving what will be going into their Social Security because it doesn't really connect to them. So as a citizen, there aren't greater tax consequences to obtaining that benefit. But I truly, I say that because I see it. And I see individuals, and when we have individuals who are applying for naturalization, if they haven't been paying their taxes, I tell them, you need to get caught up. Like, part of the requirement of becoming a US citizen is to show that while you've been a permanent resident, that you've paid your taxes. So there is a standard that is expected for those individuals.
I had a guy from South America that was working for me for a number of years, seasonally, and he had set up he had a business going down in his home country, and then he was employed by me for about 3 or 4 months out of the year, and he was in the process of setting up a business up here also, so he's trying to run businesses in 2 different countries.
You know, and under those circumstances, I send them to an employment individual or somebody who understands those consequences. That's not so much of my practice, but the way in which money moves, right? I mean, I think that this is truly a global concept and process. And I do have many individuals who are migrant workers. So they come for a duration and they go home. And there are many clients of mine who as well say, I'm just trying to get a better situation here so I can support family back home. And again, what supports a family back home versus the opportunities that are here are, I mean, distinctly different. And again, I love to tell the story about the PhD potato farmer that I work with. I mean, she's now, actually, she reached out after she became a resident in 2010. And I get this email to an old email address saying, hey, Amanda, we didn't know if you were still around. I'm like, I'm around. I'm young. I'm around. Like, I'm still doing this, please. And they said, you know, Cecilia's resident card is going to expire. And she is in Switzerland and she is in Spain and she's a Mexican citizen. You know, what do we do to make sure that she can continue to travel and contribute, and like the science that she is sharing, it fascinates me about what comes through my doors and the stories and also the individuals that come to our country with major degrees in their home country, but often those things aren't transferable or their skill set, right? Engineers can't just practice engineering when they get to the United States. They have to go through all of these qualifying tests. So what do? They take a job that minimizes their skills, right? Until they can either get up to that speed and take those tests and start to contribute as their profession was back home. I mean, I think that's hard for a lot of immigrants to say, but back home I was a lawyer and here I am doing service industry or I'm working in hospitality. You know, that's not what their intentions are. It's that they have a skill they want to be able to explore and contribute in that way, through my experience. George?
Yeah, if we take in about 1 million people a year as immigrants through the legal process, what's the argument for people coming in undocumented?
So the issue becomes that the system is broken. And again, I've been doing this for 17 years, which is a chunk of time. And in 1996, under the Clinton administration, there was a major overhaul in immigration law. And those issues created greater backlogs and created greater obstacles. So what we'd see is that individuals who are attempting to do this in a fashion that is orderly, there isn't order to it. There's not a clear way to do this always in the easiest manner. And that, I mean, that's my position, is that the system doesn't work in the way I think it should. And if it did, you wouldn't have, I think, the influx of undocumented individuals. I think that that is part of the problem. I
Okay,
think it's
well,
a system.
if we take in 1 million people a year through the system as it exists, and we keep hearing the system is broken, as you just said, but we still take in 1 million a year, which I believe is more than any other country in the world. If that's a broken system, what would make it right? And how many would we take in then if it was fixed?
I guess I am not a statistical specialist, so I couldn't tell you if 1 million is an accurate number or not. And I'm not saying it isn't. But what we do know is that the industries that require work are utilizing immigrants. And so not only as workforce, but as entrepreneurs and developing businesses and creating more jobs. And I do see that a lot with the people that I work with. And as far as families, you know, I do believe families should be together. I do believe that if you have an opportunity to sponsor a family member with the system as it is, there is this concept of family, and there are immediate relatives and there are preference categories. And really the only people you can sponsor are nuclear families. So spouses, parents, and children. There is a sibling category, but that being said, often a US citizen who sponsors a sibling, that petition, that individual waits out of the country, if you're from Mexico, for over 20 years. So again, you know, do you wait or do you make choices? And I think that that is where the imbalance is that some families can't wait 20 years to be united. It's not a perfect system by any means. And, you know, I think that we try to think creatively, but I truly try to say there are more benefits to this system and there should be more benefits to this process, because the people that really do come here wish to do amazing work. And again, that's what keeps me going, the stories and the families that I have the opportunity to work with. One of the communities that I do a significant amount of work with are victims of crimes. So here in the United States, if you have reported a crime, if you have participated in prosecution or assisted in reporting or assisted in prosecution, even if somebody wasn't convicted, and you are undocumented or you hold a student visa. So there's this concept of immigrant and non-immigrant. So individuals can come to the United States for a very specific purpose. They could be tourists. They come, they visit, they spend their money here and they go home. There are students, they come, they study, maybe they continue their studies or they take their skills back to their home country. There are investor visas, right? There are people who can, if you can bring millions of dollars to this country, we give you visas. But if you're a farm worker, you know, doing general labor, we limit the number of visas for you. So again, what do we value? I don't do employment because it's a whole world of looking at high level skills and resumes and things like that. That just wasn't what brought me to immigration law. It was really more the humanitarian side. But the idea that if you are a victim of a crime, and let's say the perpetrator of that crime is a US citizen, or it's your spouse who's a US citizen, that person holds a lot of power over you. And in that sense, if you're afraid to call the police because you're the individual who is undocumented, the Violence Against Women Act, which was initiated by Senator Biden at the time, created this system and created this response and said, we cannot leave people in the shadows, and we cannot allow individuals who are harmed to be afraid to contact law enforcement to report crime. And so this U visa was created back in the early 2000s that said, if you initiated or if you responded or cooperated with law enforcement, we will provide safety for you. And through that, it really is a tool of law enforcement. And that's how it got pitched. And that's how we still try to promote it, is that you're bringing people out of the shadows to report crimes because that keeps our communities safe. And I work with a large number of U visas, both in a domestic violence context, which is just, right? Family violence is a challenge. It's a hard situation to work with. And yet I also work with individuals who are random crime victims. I worked with an individual, I did a pro bono case for an individual out of Chicago who, minding his own business, driving through his community, and got in the crossfire of gang violence. A bullet pierced the back of his neck, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. I was able to connect with this individual through an agency. We're getting ready to make him a US citizen, right? Like, to no fault of his own. And again, why he was here, his mother had brought him here. He would have been one of those DACA kids. He would have been one of the dreamers. But because he was shot in the neck, he didn't have the opportunity to finish school. And so we were able to get him a U visa. Later, I assisted him in getting a green card. And now this year he's eligible to become a US citizen. So, I mean, those are, to me, the rewarding stories.
Oh, very good. We'll need to leave it
Okay.
there.
Okay.
I want to thank you, Mandy, for coming to visit with us. I wanted to let you know that our club makes a donation in our speaker's name to an organization of our choice, and this year is Home Mission Fund, which is Porchlight program. We're focused on rent assistance and affordable housing and this kind of challenging, as you know, environment that we have. So we will make that donation in your name to that fund. So I want to
Thank you
thank
very
you for
much.
coming.
You're very welcome. Josh, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
All right.